Welcome to Cybercast, decoding today's cybersecurity issues. I'm your host, Kate Macri. This special episode looks back at the Government CIO Media and Research Cloud Summit, where we hosted not one, but two cloud security panels. Today, I'm going to look back at 5 things we learned about cloud security at the Cloud Summit. Number 1, the first thing to always ask a cloud service provider is, do you have FedRAMP authorization?
For us, for cloud services, the first question we always ask is going to be whether or not they have FedRAMP. And the answers we get back vary, right? Because there's varying levels of FedRAMP. But in addition to that, we do have clauses within the contracts that do address security, and it's around the data, right? As far as the data, where is it going to be at? How are you protecting the data? And then also ensuring that as we kind of work with those providers, making sure that they are, number one, they have to have the FedRAMP. Because if they don't have the FedRAMP, and then there's more work that we have to do to ensure that they're meeting our security requirements.
That was Luis Coronado Jr., Director of IT Operations at DHS, speaking on our Zero Trust panel at the Cloud Summit. The second thing we learned is cloud security is a shared responsibility between the cloud service provider and the federal agency. FedRAMP Program Manager Brian Conrad discussed this on our ATO panel.
One of the biggest challenges is understanding that cloud is a shared security model. So when a cloud service offering gets a FedRAMP authorization, it's getting a stamp of approval that it meets certain requirements. And I speak mostly from the JAB side, the Joint Authorization Board side. But, when agencies use these authorized cloud services, they have responsibilities as well. And so the agencies will always need to focus on their customer responsibilities and ensuring that those are implemented in order to maintain the security of the cloud system and the data that's inside. If it's implemented properly, there's a significant level of effort the industry holds when it comes to security. And excuse me, with the security model that cloud affords, it allows, industries and what we see is agencies reusing those FedRAMP packages, the work that's been done by a cloud service to get a FedRAMP authorization, and understanding the authorizing official may have additional requirements based on their unique agency mission. So, again, the shared security model and the authorizing officials looking at different requirements that may affect their particular agency or mission.
That brings me to the third thing we learned. Encryption is key. Coronado has the details.
So encryption, I think, is key for cloud, obviously, because of the fact that, you don't own or maintain it, right? That goes back again to the risk where before, when we ran our own data centers and we maintained the data center from, the physical environment all the way up the stack, maybe there was less of a need for encryption inside of a data center. But as you're moving your workloads into a cloud environment, it is highly important that you encrypt that data in any form that it's going to be out there, whether it's going to be at rest, in transit, or even in use. And depending on what kind of cloud that you're leveraging, it could be a little bit more difficult to do. If you're leveraging IaaS, you can pretty much control a lot of the encryption capabilities there without too much of an impact in regards to performance, which is another reason I think that some folks don't do a lot of encryption, because you're obviously looking at performance for your application. But the SaaS is another piece where you also want to ensure that you do encryption. And a lot of the SaaS do encrypt. It's just figuring out what type of methods they use. Are they using their own key that they issue out that you don't have control over, or is it a key that you can bring and provide to that software as a service? And then again, you have to look and figure out, if it's a software as a service, the performance should be optimized in order for you to be able to do that encryption. But if you're building out an application yourself, from an IaaS perspective, that you're sitting on top of your own infrastructure, the organization has to determine the best way to ensure that the encryption is being done. And again, it needs to be done not just in transit, but also at rest and also in use as well.
For the fourth thing we learned about cloud security, I'm going to turn to what Defense Logistics Agency CIO George Duchek said on our Zero Trust panel. Duchek said, We have to radically change the way we think about cloud security in 2020. Duchek says, we aren't protecting a network anymore. We're protecting data. That's number 4. Assume the network isn't safe and protect the data.
Yeah, and I think that's been just the paradigm shift. 10 years ago, everybody's worried about securing the network, making sure the plumbing, and assuming a way that if you didn't get into the plumbing, the data's safe. And now we're making that, we're inverting that thinking and saying, well, no, let's assume you've gotten in. Now let's protect the data and not assume the network is safe.
And last but not least, number 5, cybersecurity as a service is on the horizon. We have infrastructure as a service, software as a service, and now we're about to have cybersecurity as a service. David Stickley, Strategic Programs Executive at Dell, tells us why.
I happen to believe that cybersecurity as a service is going to be a growing capability set. So I would just offer to my government colleagues that our inability to articulate managed service, whether it's IaaS or PaaS, you name it, is going to bleed over into a managed service cybersecurity delivery model. So we need to figure out that we need to work with our acquisition professionals and figure out how we properly align that ask to delivery with respect to cybersecurity.
I don't know about you, but I think we could have an entire event dedicated to each one of the 5 things we learned today. 1, cloud service providers need FedRAMP. 2, cloud is a shared security model. 3, encryption is key. 4, forget the network and protect the data. And 5, cybersecurity as a service is the future of cybersecurity. I hope you enjoyed this quick recap of cybersecurity talking points from our Cloud Summit. To hear more about what's happening in the constantly evolving world of federal cybersecurity, subscribe to Cybercast and stay up to date on the latest cyber trends and insight. I'm your host, Kate Macri. Thank you for listening.
Cybercast is a production of Government CIO Media and Research. For more podcasts, head to governmentcio.com/podcasts. If you're interested in sponsoring a podcast, contact us at sponsor@governmentcio.com.